All right. Welcome to the Tempo Community Call May 2024. We have some big things to discuss today. We have a pretty packed agenda. I'll post that again so it'll show up in the recording. Throughout the call, if you come up with questions, you are welcome to unmute and ask. None of this is a canned presentation. You're welcome to make this conversation. You're also welcome to post in chat or whatever way makes sense. All community members are invited to add agenda items, so don't feel like you can't discuss something just because it's not on there. Questions are encouraged. We're just here to talk about Tempo mainly. In the doc, we kind of have the few things we want to focus on today, but like I said, this is open for all to bring up their own topics. So we're talking a bit about Parquet 4, which was just merged, and there's our latest iteration of Parquet 4 and what's going on there. Tempo 2.5, which should come out this month. We're targeting end of month. Some architectural changes. Mario is going to review those. Is that right, Mario? Yeah, I think he was nodding before. Okay. Thanks, Mario. So the changes I think a lot of people are here to see, and I did kind of at the channel twice because I really want people's input and I want some visibility on this in the community. We have some changes coming up that we are strongly considering. Mario is going to go over why we're considering those, the reason behind it, the advantages as we see, the disadvantages, like the concerns, and we welcome everyone to express or ask questions or get involved and let us know what they think about some of that. And the final one is the future of serverless, and Suraj is welcome to review that if you would like. I'm not sure, I don't want to commit him to it, but he is kind of reviewing it on our side. Suraj, are you up for that, or do you want me to chat through that one?
Yeah, I can take it.
Awesome. Okay, so Suraj will discuss the serverless questions we have in the future. Okay, so let me get some names down. Does anybody mind? If you don't mind putting your own name in, or if somebody from our side doesn't mind just like kind of reading the list and slamming some names down, I would really appreciate it. All right, so let's start at the top. We kind of went through the items there. Parquet 4. So we're on our 4th iteration of Parquet. 3 was all about dedicated columns, and we saw very nice performance improvements with those columns. Parquet 4 is an addition or an update for features. So 3 was mainly a performance improvement. 4 is mainly a feature improvement. We have a number of new columns in the Parquet format. So there is an increase in footer size. The increase in footer size translates to a slight regression. And we're kind of quantifying that on our side right now. We're running this in dev. We intend to roll this out to our larger clusters over the next week or so. And then to our production clusters probably in the next month. We don't really have a timeline, but that would be my guess, assuming no concerning changes. So we do expect a small regression, and we might work on that in Parquet 5. The main reason, like I said, is for some nice features. So Parquet 4 has added some columns. Some of those are contributed by Andreas of Red Hat. Thank you to Red Hat. They've been a great partner with Tempo, added a lot of nice features. And these columns were mainly to add trace level statistics, such as the list of services, services present in the trace, as well as errors and spans per service. And so we're going to use this, and I think Red Hat intends to as well, to enrich the UI. So you're doing a TraceQL query right now, you get about like a bunch of trace IDs, and you have some basic information like the root service. So with this information, we can decorate the results a little bit more, and we can add here are the 5 or 10 or whatever services that participated in the trace in the results, as well as number of spans or errors in each service. So this is a really cool addition from Andreas. He got involved while Parquet 4 is being worked on and got those nice features in, and we will hope to get those in the Grafana UI soon enough. And they'll be in the they will automatically be in the results, the search results, if you're using Parquet 4. And then the other columns that were added were because we need to extend the TraceQL language, and we need this format to do that. But we want to add support for events, links, and arrays. These are elements of the OTel spec that we did not support before. So we are excited to add some support for that. And I'm going to actually, can somebody else do this? Can somebody find we have a TraceQL extensions README doc in the repo. I should have linked it, but we have a number of extensions planned that we are going to add, I guess also kind of in the next 3 to 6 months. Next couple of releases of Tempo, expect support for these features. And we'll hope to get some maybe in 2.5. I don't know. We'll try to get some in 2.5. If not, definitely the next release should have some nice support here. But I think people have been waiting on those a lot. I would like them as well. More and more of the OTel clients or SDKs are using arrays, especially for things like HTTP headers. And we want to be able to support that in TraceQL. Thank you for whoever pasted the extensions link. If you want to take a look at some of our proposed syntaxes or comment, feel free. Okay, so Parquet 4 is an exciting new feature. It will be in Tempo 2.5. It will not be default in 2.5. But it will be configurable, and I'll add details in the blog post when we post it, why it's not default and what you would do if you want some of these features immediately. Okay. 2.5 coming up, hopefully at the end of the month. It would be at our normal cadence. Our normal cadence is about 4 a year, about once a quarter. And the end of this month would put us on exactly that, roughly 3 months after the previous release. I've linked a changelog list there, so kind of the raw changelog from whatever's just like not in a release. So you're welcome to kind of glance through that. And I've highlighted a few that I thought were worth discussing in this meeting. Of course, once 2.5 comes out, there'll be a blog post that reviews all of the major changes, release notes. There'll be the normal set of docs around that. But vParquet, the original, is going to be removed. Support for it will be removed in 2.5, and it hasn't been default since like 2.1 or 2.2. So it will make the upgrade path require some of those intermediate versions. But to simplify the code base and speed up our tests, and for a lot of reasons, we're cutting out the old Parquet. And there'll be details in the blog post to help people know, okay, now you can't get from like 2.1 to 2.5 kind of. You have to go through all the minor versions. We are adding support for additional metrics. TraceQL metrics will remain kind of this beta feature. We're continuing to work on that. Mario will touch a bit on why that's still beta and what we're looking to do to make it GA when he's going to talk about some of these architectural changes because they're related to GA and TraceQL metrics. But you will see 2 new functions. So in 2.4, we supported just rate of spans. We will have support for quantiles. These are actually both already merged into main. Quantiles or histograms on float values. So duration would be the obvious one, but we were having some fun doing quantiles of HTTP status code, which is meaningless, but kind of funny to look at. But you can do it in TraceQL. Quantiles of HTTP status code, histograms on HTTP status code, if that's what you're interested in. New TraceQL metrics features, again, we'll go over it in a bit about why that's not GA yet and what we're looking to do, hopefully in the next release to make that GA. And then finally, Zach caught a long-running issue that we've always known as something we've wanted to improve and never had a chance, but Tempo is no longer running as root in the Docker image. So this is a nice security improvement, no longer using that root user ID or group ID. I do think this will require some changes. Zach, you want to talk about that at all? I kind of put you on the spot here. Feel free not.
Well, good. Yeah, so the approach we've taken with the JSON and we will do this in Helm also is to have an init container that runs as root just on startup. And then this will chown all of the existing data because we're going from root to non-root. And so we need to make sure the data is writable and readable by the new Tempo user. So there will be changes. If you fall outside of the Helm or the JSON, then yeah, feel free to ask questions, jump in the Slack, come chat with us. We can help you work through some of that. But chances are that you will require some manual intervention there.
That will be another great thing. Zach, let's sync when we get this blog post together. I want to make sure we have some good steps in there and make sure people have the visibility on that change because that will definitely catch some people.
Yep, for sure.
Thank you. Cool. All right. So Parquet 4 upcoming. It'll be in 2.5, 2.45, hopefully by end of month. That's the goal right now. And I don't necessarily see anything that stands in the way of that. But you know how software goes. Some days you think everything's running smooth, and the next day it's not so much. So hopefully the last week of this month. And let's move on to, I think, what a lot of people are here for, and Mario's going to walk us through some of these architectural changes we're thinking about, why we're thinking about them, and I will hand it off to him.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Okay, I've prepared a couple of slides, so hopefully it'll be easier to follow. This involves details on how tempo works and some like in-depth details. I'll try to do a quick version, but if anyone has any questions, you don't have to wait until the end of the call. I just type them or unmute and ask. All right, so first, I wanted to give a bit of some context on what we're thinking about these architectural changes. And all of this sort of boils down basically to the new metrics capabilities that we're adding to TraceQL, and some of the challenges that we've been facing to make these TraceQL metrics perform to the level we want and we were hoping. Well, first of all, as most of you will probably know, especially if you're running a distributed deployment of Tempo, for durability and high availability, it's recommended that Tempo is run with a replication factor of 3. And that's also the way we run it internally. And well, this brings some challenges, some that are specific to TraceQL metrics, some that are not. And the first one, it's the most obvious, and that is that there is redundant data, basically. So Tempo runs compaction, but compaction takes a while to dedupe all the data, and even when it gets to like high levels of compaction, so it has done basically multiple rounds of compaction, it's very difficult that it gets to complete deduplication. So you have essentially only one copy. So basically what this means is that basically in every read, this is not specific to TraceQL metrics, just in any read, we're reading more data than necessary. And opening files and reading from object storage is expensive, especially in CPU time and in memory, and it can add up to a lot of time in queries, especially when we're looking to make them very fast. And the other main challenge is that duplicated data impacts the way that we can do sharding at the efficiency of the queries. And this is more specific to TraceQL metrics. So for TraceQL and ID lookups, you can usually dedupe at the highest level because when you merge all the jobs. But for metrics, that's not the case because you want the metrics to be deduplicated. So if you're running a rate, you want the actual value without all the deduplication. The deduplication has to happen at the job level. So what this means is every job will have to inspect all the spans of a given trace. Maybe this is getting too much into detail, but very sum up, every job is opening every file. This is not very efficient. And adding that to the fact that we have redundant data, replication factor 3 is a big challenge for TraceQL metrics. So we try to overcome this with a number of different approaches, most importantly, sharded compaction. This was an attempt to shard compaction. So so what we wanted was to create shards of ranges in the blocks. So all the traces from this, like from this ID to this ID, from this range will be in a certain block, and the next block would cover another range, and so on, to sort of try to mimic the way we do sharding in queries. But in the end, this tuning compaction with this new technique would prove to be very difficult, and results were underwhelming for what we were looking for. There is a pull request that is, I think, marked as draft. If you're curious, you can go look it up. All right, so after this mess of me rambling about technical challenges that we didn't overcome, comes the architectural changes. Okay, so now you have the context. Replication factor 3 is we have to run with replication factor 3 for durability and HA, but it's a huge challenge for tricycle metrics. So what we thought was, well, if we cannot make RF3 work, or we cannot make tricycle metrics work on top of RF3, how could we make RF1? So the current architecture for Tempo is this one. We have the distributors writing to the ingesters and the queryers reading from the backend, so from S3 or JCS, and also the ingesters. So we have this kind of, so the ingesters in the end have this kind of duality, in which they belong to the write path and to the read path. And essentially, there is no way we can run the ingesters with a replication factor of 1 and continue having the requirements that we were mentioning before. So what we thought was, what about if we introduce the durability via another way, instead of having the writes duplicated to the ingesters? And in this case, the durability would be introduced by a durable queue. Possibly Kafka, maybe yes, maybe not. That's why the initial topic in the agenda was called just Kafka question. So essentially, with this new architecture, the write path would be limited to the distributors and this new queue, and then the read path, the ingesters would be moved basically to the read path. They would consume all the data from the queue, and then flash blocks. Because we have durability coming from the queue, we can create RF1 blocks, essentially. So yeah, this is the high level architecture. I don't know how much more to talk. I could talk about this for probably longer than an hour. I don't want to say myself more than I've already done. I don't know if anyone has any questions or wants to comment on anything. But yeah, basically, we wanted to discuss this change that we're thinking, especially because it introduces a new dependency, and we know people will have very, very strong opinions or not so strong about running Kafka or any other alternative, and in general, introducing a new dependency to Tempo. So we believe this would be a massive improvement, because it will lower TCO. It would make the write path and the read path more reliable. It would ease and lower a lot of the responsibility that the ingesters have now, which are this very beefy component that we have right now. They're very heavy, and they're very difficult to do. And it would definitely make tricycle metrics work much, much better, and it would allow us to get to the point that we want to get to. So yeah, we want to hear your thoughts on introducing a new dependency and making these architectural changes. That's. I hope this was understandable.
I think you did good, Mario. Right, I think the main point, right, we're looking for a queue to push our durability and availability concerns onto, to get down to RF1. TraceQL search will be significantly faster. TCO will go down, and metrics will go from not really viable at a couple hundred megabytes a second to viable at a couple hundred megabytes per second, which is what we're looking for. So right, any questions or concerns, please raise them. Another element of this that I really like, I mean, there's obvious things to be concerned about, but I'll point out something I think is a strong pro here, which is right now, it's only possible to run tempo essentially in RF3. Everyone is forced to do a replication level 3, which of course incurs an amount of cost, extra costs on the system. If you have this architecture, you can configure Kafka in an RF1 style mode or an RF3 style mode, and you will have like a slider between availability, durability, and cost that you can't control now. So you could run, if you run RF1 Kafka with the new tempo architecture we're considering, I would think that TCO would be vastly lower. If you run with RF3 Kafka, our current expectation it will be slightly lower. So I like that there's this new tunable in the tempo architecture that gives people the choice to run a much cheaper version of tempo. Despite, I do know there'll be concerns. I do hope that most people will be okay with this. Kafka is a pretty well-known technology. I think a lot of people have access to it, but it is, every dependency is complexity, and we recognize that. All right. Yeah.
One question, if you don't mind me asking.
Mhm.
What is the impact on ingesters you have seen with this change, specifically around the write performance? I know we are changing the replication factor, so that definitely will impact how much writes the ingesters are going to be doing. Second thing, any benefits we have seen in terms of search performance because of this architecture change, if any, or if this has been tested in dev? I'm just asking.
Sure, I can address that. Mario, do you want to take that? I can.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand. Do you mean with this architecture already?
Yeah. So have we deployed this architecture anywhere and kind of did a first round of a POC to see what kind of impact it has on the ingesters in the long run?
Right. Well, we haven't deployed this anywhere still. We wanted to get feedback very early before like shipping this anywhere.
Okay.
But what we expect would be so the injustices would become way smaller because they would have less responsibilities. They probably use surely less CPU, less memory, because they will need to have data like in memory and in disk for way longer. Essentially, all the responsibilities that injustice have right now are mostly delegated to the queue, and they're the injustices are moved into this more not completely stateless but less massive component to a more lightweight one. And in terms of performance improvements, is tough to say. We think the performance improvement will be massive for TraceQL metrics. For ID lookups, probably less noticeable. Although it still should be much higher, just because the challenges, as outlined at the beginning, impact differently the different queries. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure about saying numbers.
No.
Like 50%.
I totally understand. I was just curious. If this has been deployed or if you did a small POC or something like that.
Yeah. Well, it should be like a significant change, I would say.
As we experiment with this, we will absolutely share numbers with the community as we start seeing them on our side. So as soon as we have numbers, you will have numbers as well. I'll also point out that compactors will be significantly cheaper to run. So the current most expensive thing that compactors do is take a Parquet trace, turn it into a proto trace, do a combine logic on them, because when we see two with the same trace ID, we combine. And then rewrite that as one big trace in the output block. And so that should become significantly less important with RF1. It'll still happen some because of traces that were broken across blocks, but it'll be significantly less common. And so I think compactor costs might go down by a quarter, a half. We're making guesses here, and we will absolutely share the numbers when they come through. We do. I wish Marty were here because I know he's run some experiments on RF1 metrics and seen that we know for sure is like 3 times faster or even more because the dedupe was so costly. So that's the primary reason we're going this way, but we do expect across the board to see improvements, TCO reduction and search improvements.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thanks for the question. That was good. If there's no more, we'll move forward a bit with Siraj's. I do encourage anyone to ask other questions. So maybe think about it some while Siraj is going through serverless and ask questions about the serverless stuff he's about to discuss. And then questions over the whole agenda. Everything we've discussed is also fair game. So once Siraj is done, we'll open it up and say, please type in the chat or please unmute, whatever you're comfortable with. And we will answer any questions people have or concerns. So maybe kind of think on that while Siraj is going through his piece and be ready to chuck something in if you got something. Siraj, what are you up to?
Yeah, so I guess I'll introduce serverless first because I'm assuming not everybody knows what it is. So serverless is a component of Tempo that allows you to spill over your access queries. So Querier will spill over those queries and it will spin up cloud functions or a Lambda or Cloud Run functions and execute query and then return the results back. We added it super early when we added support for search, and we added it in Google Cloud Run and AWS Lambda. We never gotten around adding it to Azure. Correct me if I'm wrong. So yes, so we don't support Azure yet. It was helpful in the early days of search, but as Tempo matured, we saw that we could tune our search performance and get better value by keeping the search within queries and not letting it spill over. So right now, most of our clusters do very little spillover where they spin up these functions. So we are thinking or asking community if anybody is using these serverless functions at scale, getting values from it. Like, are you significantly getting value from these functions? Because we've seen significant challenges. So the major one is cold start. Latencies from these spillovers will mostly be in seconds instead of it being milliseconds. And that's quite high, in my opinion. Another one is it's hard to observe these functions because they are very short-lived. The only metrics that we have are the metrics that queries are providing that, hey, I spawned a function. We don't get logs from these functions. We don't get metrics. Sure, you can do it, but then it will be a lot more work and painful to do. Another one is every cloud provider has their own way of deploying these functions. And that's why we only support the 2 cloud providers as of today. And I'm assuming people who run their own data centers will have no way of running these functions. And also AWS has deprecated Go 1.x runtime, which we are using. So that all these things have made us think, like, is it worth keeping serverless? Can we remove this? Or I guess another question that I want to ask is, will you be sad if we remove Tempo serverless? Another thing is we did, as I said, we did a lot of tuning work internally, and we wrote those down in our public talks. So those findings and those recommendations are available to everyone. And my thinking process is that you can use those recommendations and tune your queries and maybe spawn, add 10-20% extra queries and get better predictable performance than doing serverless. So yeah.
Cool.
That's serverless. We haven't made a decision, so we came to community to ask the important question: will you be sad?
What emoji best describes your face if we say no serverless? Right. So the kind of thing that sparked this conversation, Suraj went over all the good points, but AWS dropped support for the framework we're using, and we're trying to find resources to, upgrade to the newest framework, and then we start asking questions that are even worth it. So that's why we're here asking you all. And Suraj has a project this quarter to review that. So any input from the community would be helpful. If no one has input, then we're just going to do what makes sense for us. Maybe that's continue to support it if we feel like we're getting the value, or if it simplifies the code base and it's just the value's not there, we'll just drop support. So if you do have strong opinions, please let us know in Slack or perhaps through a GitHub issue or discussion. In fact, it might be smart for us to start a GitHub issue, Suraj, called Investigate Serverless, or consider dropping serverless, call to the community for, request the community for a comment. And that way they can jump in that issue and drop some comments if someone does really want us to keep the serverless support. Cool. All right, here we are, roughly at the, any other topics, team? I think we roughly covered our thoughts today. If you have questions, feel free to ask in chat or unmute. Otherwise, we might just ramble on about coffee and whether it should be cold or hot, and whether tea is any good, because I think it's terrible. I'm with, who's the, what was that? The soccer coach from the really super popular show that just came out and he hates tea. Nobody knows this?
Lasso?
Thank you, Ted
Ted
Lasso. Okay, yeah, Ted Lasso. He was always down about tea. So yeah, Ted Lasso exists. All right, crew. If there are no questions, we appreciate. Oh, here we go. What's up?
One question, sorry.
Yeah, no.
Refactor PR open for compactor to, I know that's currently in draft mode. You guys have been talking about it and reviewing it. So my question is, are we still planning changes in compactor with the new architecture change we are going to be bringing? Because again, the work for compactor would be significantly reduced as we talked about it. So what is the end goal and what is the thought process on that moving forward?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, definitely. So we did all this work mainly thinking about traceability metrics, and when we didn't get the results that we were hoping for, we sort of froze it and move it to draft. That doesn't mean we want to just drop all the work that we did, and we intend to coming back to it once we wrap up what we're currently working on for traceability metrics. I think it's still very useful, as you say, especially I think for ID lookups when you're querying a trace for ID, should have a very nice improvement. But yeah, we intend to come back to it, but just we haven't prioritized it. We decided to froze it for the time being.
Got it. Thank you.
But yeah, if anyone has interest, we encourage to take a look at it and work on it.
I also have a sneaking suspicion, unconfirmed, that more smaller blocks are going to be better for search as well as metrics than fewer big blocks. So forever ago, Tempo's goal was to make giant, as big blocks as possible to make trace by ID search very quick. As it's matured and the code base is matured, we don't need that anymore. And the sharding does a good job of reducing the number of blocks that have to be looked at for trace by ID search, which would give us the ability to have far more blocks and stable trace by ID search. And the blocks will be smaller. And we talked about this a bit ago, but Parquet 4 increases the footer size. The footer size is a fixed cost for all queries. And if we can reduce that size, I think it's going to end up being a benefit for traceability metrics and search. It's kind of a guess, and I do want to expend some resources on the next quarter or two, next couple months on that PR. See if we can't get smaller blocks. See if we are seeing an impact like I expect. on search. So that's something of a guess, but we've definitely not abandoned it. It's on the back burner for the moment for us to get metrics done and hopefully this queue architecture done. But it's definitely still in the mix.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool. All right, crew. Thank you everyone for showing up, especially anonymous Tempo user, my favorite Tempo user. Appreciate you coming in and chatting with us. Everyone take care. Hopefully you're not too upset or shocked about some of these changes. Hopefully you can see some of the benefits we see, or once we get some numbers out there, you will maybe be persuaded. Regardless, engage us. Let us know what you think. Ask in Slack. I personally struggle to keep track of Slack. Some of the other team members do. GitHub discussion, I always try to chime in on. GitHub issues I watch closer, but all of these methods of engaging us are encouraged. So let us know what you think. Post some questions. We will do our best to get back to you and keep this conversation alive so we're all aware of the changes and are kind of on board with it. But thank you all. And hopefully we'll see you next month. We'll see you when we see you.
Thank you.
Take care, all.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.